name off all the guys for the people listening right now.
You want me to name them off?
Yeah, if you want to. I don't have it pulled up, actually.
Victor Wembanyama. I am so sorry if I butcher that name. I know some guys turn this off the moment I do that, but I apologize. Brandon Miller at number 2, Scoot Henderson at number 3, Jarris Walker at number 4. That's nice. And then Anthony Black. That's an interesting name, and we'll get into that in a second. I do like this top 5 because I feel like the draft is all based on potential, but I feel like all 5 of these guys are day one players. Like, whether they're starting or coming off the bench, they're going to contribute day one. And that's what I love about James Edwards, and that's what I love about Troy Weaver's drafts, because Troy Weaver just doesn't always swing for the fence on potential. I think Killian Hayes was the biggest swing for the fence so far in his early days of drafting. I think Killian Hayes was the biggest reach. But I feel like Cade, forget Cade, Jaden Ivey, Sadiq, and Isaiah Stewart all in the first round. Those were guys that can contribute day one. I feel like that's just usually how Troy Weaver drafts. So I love this draft, man. I love this big board. I think James Edwards hit it. I think this is as close to Troy Weaver as you'll possibly get without Troy Weaver actually doing it himself.
Yeah, like I didn't really hate the big board. Just the Anthony Black thing to me was to be honest, try to like get engagement. For being honest, that's kind of like what you're doing when you're writing articles. I think Anthony Black is talented, but I don't think he's a top 5 pick. I just don't. I think he's like more in the range of like a 7 to 9. I think if you were to draft him at 5, that's just a reach.
I feel like he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
I feel like he's getting a lot of love, and maybe I'm off with this comparison, but I think he's getting a lot of love for top 5 because of Josh Giddey. I feel like their games are kind of similar. Big body, point forwards, high IQ, not super athletic, good on the boards, willing to make the extra pass, but kind of struggled as scorers early on in their careers. But Josh Giddey, dude, he's if you're doing a redraft in that draft, he probably goes number 2 behind Cade. Maybe. That's just my
opinion. I wasn't like too like that top 5 wasn't too controversial. Like obviously like Victor's going to be 1. We all know that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Brandon Miller at 2. I know there's some people that would take Scoot at 2. I'm okay with Brandon Miller at 2. Scoot at 3, whatever. I think I'll be a top 3 pick regardless of, who has the draft lottery. Whoever will probably know what it'll look like in the next 2 weeks or so. 4 is interesting with Jarris Walker. I think defensively he makes so much sense for the Pistons, but I kind of question how you don't have Cam Whitmore in the top 5, because I just think athletically it's just we always talk about how we don't have these athletes. Like we're not a very athletic team outside of Jaden Ivey and Hamidou Diallo. Like we love Sadiq Bey, but he wasn't like the most athletic guy, right?
Yeah.
I think Cam Whitmore is just such an athlete, and he's so gifted offensively that I think he should be a top 5 pick. And I think some people just aren't high on him. Maybe it's because defensively he's not as good as Jarris Walker, but I could understand the Jarris Walker at 4 because you can kind of put him in that 2 big lineup like we were talking about last week. Maybe now you have another guy that's similar to Isaiah Stewart from a standpoint where now you can have a James Wiseman and Jarris Walker, or an Isaiah Stewart and a Jalen Duren. So I think that's probably why James had Jarris Walker at 4, because he can kind of be that 4 that you could pair with another center on this team.
Yeah, I had him at 5. I had Taylor Hendricks, if you remember, at number 4. I do like Jarris Walker. I do. I'm kind of backtracking a little bit here, though, because I might take him out of my top 5. But before I get into that, with Cam Whitmore, though, I've noticed, though, it does seem like he's kind of slipping a little bit lately in mock drafts, right? Kind of slipping like out of the top 5, more of like a 7 to 9 type of player. Why do you think that is? Just because of like he's only 6'7", and I know we're in positionless basketball, but there seems to be kind of a shift where you want to get taller, more skilled guys in at that 4 and 5 spot.
I think it's this more of like, obviously, like what you said with the height and like defense, right? I think
Yep.
offensively, he's talented. I mean, I was listening to Kevin O'Connor's podcast, and they had comped him to Miles Bridges, which I thought was very interesting because there is a lot of similarity to like their athletic ability, him and Miles
Yeah.
Bridges. Um, I like I said, there's just so much to like with him. It's just I think defensively, you kind of have your questions, and that's okay. No prospect is perfect as they get
Yeah.
drafted. Like maybe he can become a above average defender. You never really know, but I think that's why he has slipped out of the top 5.